I'm listening to these people and how this medicine affects them and what it does for them. And it changed my life. I mean, I was an advocate and a proponent for my whole life, but to really have that kind of that first-hand exchange with people at that level,
yeah,
it's mind-blowing. And you know, and you're from your own experience, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, and I would tell people, opponents of medical marijuana, why don't you just volunteer for half a day in a medical marijuana facility, one of my clients, and sit there and see what goes on. I said, I guarantee you it will change your life.
All right, we're sitting here in the office of Jay Berneburg with Jay Berneburg, the first attorney to actually win a case against the
LCB.
LCB, yeah, that's right. And basically his case is based on definitions of the law and rulemaking, correct?
Yep.
So, yeah, give us a rundown of what you got going here.
Well, we'll begin at the end, and then we'll loop back to the beginning so that it makes sense.
All right.
Okay. Basically this, I, on behalf of 13 clients, we sued the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board for declaratory judgment and injunctive relief. And what that means is this. We argued that the rules that they made regarding the way they assigned priority 1 and priority 2 and priority 3 for the retailing license and retail licenses, that they had exceeded their statutory authority in doing so, and that therefore those rules were invalid.
Yeah, and that was based on the definition of collective bargaining, correct?
But yeah, well, and we'll come back to that because there's a little bit more than that. But
all right.
But yeah, basically, yeah. And the judge agreed with us. The judge July 1st ruled in our favor. So July 29th, the judge is going to review the transcripts of her ruling. We're going to be entering an order 1 week from this Friday. So that's where we're at with it. Now, give some history here so that this all makes sense, and you know exactly what we did. You know, there's been, since this last article came out in The Stranger, there's been a lot of people, wow, this is great, you beat down the LCB and it's this and that, and it's not what people seem to think it is. I mean, this is very limited ruling that does a very limited thing. Now it has consequences, downstream collateral consequences, which could turn out to be much larger than how this started out. So here's what I mean. We go back to Senate Bill 5052 from 2015, and the legislature determined that they wanted to merge the medical marijuana with the 502 recreational marijuana.
Yep.
Now, a lot of people are really upset, pissed off about this.
Oh yeah.
It's the end of medical marijuana. No, it's not. When you say the end of medical marijuana, we've got to be clear about what you're talking about. Because if we're talking about medicine, and people's access to cannabis, in the long run, it could actually be better than it has been. Right now, we don't know anything about medical marijuana. We don't know where it's grown, how it's grown, who's doing it, what the circumstances are. Is it contaminated? Does it have mold, mites, pesticide? Is it harlequin, or are they just calling it harlequin? Yeah. We don't know. And we have no way of...
Yeah, there was those problems out there in the industry. The problem is that a lot of people weren't given a chance to...
The other problem is this. Going back to 2009, the very first 3 medical dispensaries to open in the city of Tacoma were raided and arrested. Right after that, someone came to me and said, look, I've got money and people, we really want to do this, but we don't want to get arrested. How do we do it? And so I wrote a legal position paper explaining how they could comply with the law and provide medical marijuana to patients who needed it. Yeah. The very first thing that I started with is, if you are going to claim to be medical, you better be medical. If you think that this is a wink and a nod to the party, a wink and a nod to Cheech and Chong, and that you can just sell marijuana and claim to be medical and that's going to get you through, that's not going to work. And I will have a very difficult time defending you.
Yeah, all right. Well, we're going to stop it right there. And we're just going to let you guys know right off the bat that some of what you're about to hear and see is probably going to piss a lot of people in the medical community off. But is it the truth? Yeah, somewhat. Is it the whole truth? No, not entirely. Is there a lot of truth to it? Yeah, there's quite a bit. But we'll get to that here in just a minute. Anyways, just wanted to go on record and say that, be warned.
When you look at what happened with medical marijuana, you know, medical marijuana wasn't killed, it committed suicide. You know, we got people out here doing, and I know a lot of people like farmers markets. I have said from day one they're not legal. You know, there is a way to do it legal, but what I saw out there wasn't legal. What I saw was the same thing the state legislators saw and our opponents saw. They saw tables and tables and tables of people growing and selling marijuana. Were they patients? Were they not patients? Was it legally grown? Who the fuck knew? Because nobody checked. And the people in there buying it, are they underage? Are they really medical marijuana? Did anyone verify the authorization? Do they even have an
I
authorization?
think some do. I know
Some
what you call
do.
it, but they do.
Some do.
It's
Some
called
don't.
PSC, they're pretty careful there. when you do
Yeah,
it
there were
right,
some
though.
that did.
It's not everybody, you're
Well,
right.
and then there was the whole atmosphere.
Yeah.
We're doing dabs, we're eating brownies, and we're goddess dancing in the aisles while the band's playing. Okay, yeah, every hospital I've ever fucking been to, the intensive care unit, all the nurses break it doing goddess dance down the aisles. No, it's not fucking medical, you know, and maybe it is. Maybe it is, and maybe they were, but they were not respecting the people who were afraid of it.
Yeah.
And you have, and I've said all along, you have to be a good neighbor. You can't go out and scare the shit out of people, and you can't just shove it down their throat and say, we're medical, we can do what we want.
Yeah.
But no, we all show up at the fucking state legislature wearing color-coded t-shirts, set up a smoking tent at the fucking stairs, get fucking blasted in the state capitol, go, we're medical, we can do what we want.
Somewhere and somewhere.
Boom! Medical committed fucking
How do you
suicide.
differentiate, you know?
Well,
I mean, that's okay, we're gonna stop it right there again. Now, did medical commit, you know, suicide? Well, sure, to a degree. You know, did a lot of things happen that weren't, you know, ethically, medically right? Yeah, there was plenty of it. There was plenty of players doing things that they weren't supposed to. Was it everybody or the whole of the medical community? No, not in any way. Is it okay to celebrate cannabis culture and still be medical? Yes, every bit.
Committed fucking suicide.
You know,
Well,
I mean, that's the big
the
deal.
way you differentiate is by having procedures in place,
Yeah.
okay? And you follow those procedures, and you look. If I'm growing marijuana, or I sell you marijuana, and the police get involved, and you go, that's the unlawful delivery of a controlled substance. That's the unlawful manufacture of a controlled substance. And I say, no, it's medical. It's okay. And they go, well, all right, fine, but just because you say it doesn't make it so. You've got to present us with evidence that you're in compliance with the law. And if that's so, then fine. If not, we're back over here to this little felony problem.
Yeah.
Which isn't so little. It's like being a little pregnant or a little addicted, right? So the analysis is this. What does it mean to comply, and what constitutes evidence? You know, my story, well, they had a card and I had a card, man. The band was playing, so we all just did a dab and we were all cool. That's not fucking evidence. I mean, well, it is. This is not good evidence. Say it under oath, I suppose. Evidence means that we can prove that what we're doing. We form a collective garden. My clients do a formation agreement. We're in a collective garden because we said we are. We are patients. We put on paper, we're going to be a collective garden. This is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Here's our authorizations and here's our identification.
And collective gardens where patients put in, patients take out.
Well, it's more complicated than that. Again, we don't want to oversimplify this, and that's what medical has done over and over and over. They make it real simple, they take shortcuts, and in the end, they cannot produce the evidence that they need to prove that they're following the law. And a lot of them couldn't produce the evidence because guess what? They weren't following the law anyway.
Yeah.
They were selling marijuana, and especially after 502, look, anybody walked through the door could buy weed. They didn't even check authorizations in a lot of cases.
The way the priority system went down, it seemed to me that most of the people who were following the law as a collective garden, as a non-industry
Well, and
model,
we'll come up to that because that's exactly what happened.
we're shut out. You know, I mean, our garden itself has been producing 4 patients. We verified that they are patients. Half of our people, I mean, we've got people that are missing eyes and some that are missing legs. You know, some that were ran over by cars, you know what I mean? Some that had liver cancer.
And here's another problem. There's a lot of places out there were doing good medical work, but they were also going along with the party.
Yeah, there's some of that too.
I mean, look, dude, I was asked, Pierce County did a task force, they did a medical marijuana enforcement strategy task force. And the attorney for the county executive called me and asked me if I would participate. And I said, hell yeah, give us a chance to maybe keep the medical places open longer. I walked in the very first meeting, and we were there, mind you, with Pierce County Sheriff, county council members, the county executive, people from planning and land services, everybody who's really concerned about this. And they start the meeting off with a YouTube clip that somebody found posted on YouTube of what he says, this is medical marijuana in Pierce County. And it starts off with Cat Jeter doing a 1 gram dab challenge. Yeah. And everybody's laughing, going, yeah, that's medical, all
that's
right.
When the guy
that's the problem.
The camera down to the,
right? Okay, that's, mind you, that's in their minds what medical marijuana was. You can sit here all day long and tell me what you did, and I think it's absolutely fucking wonderful. Does it help? No, because that's not what they saw.
Well, I'll tell you what, it didn't help me all along.
No, what the politicians and what the legislators saw was what I warned about from 2009, that if you're doing the party, they will not recognize it as medical, even if you are. They will not that is not medicine to them. Medicine is alcohol, sterile pads, people in music, sterile atmospheres, clinics, doctors. That's medical. Yeah. Not a fucking giant pot party, open air market. That's not medical.
Yeah.
Right? But now,
for us,
mind
we spend our whole lives grinding in a garden, keeping it sterile.
Right. Now, mind you, a lot of the people there believed that it was, and thought that it was, and did so with good intent. And and I've said over and over, I wish we lived in a world where that was cool, because I thought those things were just absolutely wonderful at that level. But as a lawyer, trying to keep marijuana medical and keep it legal, it was a fucking nightmare. How do I convince a prosecutor that you're medical when that's what they think medical is? Yeah, the House Affairs Committee is sitting there, Representative Hurst, the House Government Affairs Committee, it's on video. He's got Department of Health, Department of Revenue, and LCB sitting there. And he comes out and he goes, 99.9%, strike that. 99.2% of all medical marijuana transactions are recreational and therefore felonies. Department of Health, Revenue, and LCB. What do you think? Department of Health, Christy Weeks says, I agree, I think every transaction is a felony. He said, I want you all to come back in 30 days with recommendations. Department of Health comes back and says, get rid of it. We don't need it. It's not medical. Department of Revenue comes back and says, we don't need it. Get rid of it. It's not medical. Yeah. LCB says, we'll take it. Right? And that's what happened. And whether that was true or not, Hearst was full of shit. He's making stuff up on the spot. We know that.
Yeah, everybody knows that.
But they all believed it. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Truth is what's believed, not necessarily what's factually, objectively determinable. Okay.
Yeah.
I've done enough trials.
It's all perception.
I'm a trial lawyer. I understand this probably better than most people. But here's the thing: they believed it, and that's what they acted on. So what happened was they said finally they'd had enough. They'd had absolutely enough of this shit. And they says, we're going to make medical. We want patients to have medical. We're not going to do it this way. We're going to do it this way. We're going to take this over and control it. Yeah. And that's what they did. Medical wasn't killed by greed. Well, it was, but...
Okay, we're going to cut it and stop it right there. Did medical commit suicide? To a degree. Did medical have assistance? Oh, yes, it did. I don't know if you can actually say it was a full-on medical committed suicide. It had quite a bit of assistance in the fact that we've got mountains of data showing that the government was basically paid off, and that Ann Rivers took, most of her bill and advice on her bill from Vicky Christopherson at, the WSLCB, whatever you want to call it, Washington Cannabis Association, CORE, these other organizations. They had a lot to do with the assisted suicide in medical. So did medical commit suicide? If anything, you could say it was an assisted suicide, but it definitely had help.
Well, it was, but it was by the people in medical.
It was killed by marijuana gone wild.
Yeah, it was people in medical who did not respect the law, did not respect our opponents. Right. I've said repeatedly that the fear out there is irrational. It's based on propaganda and bad information. But the fear itself is real. Yeah. And we had better respect that, and we better treat it with love and treat it kindly. Because if we shove it up their ass, they're going to shove it up ours, and they got the final word.
Well, you've been out here basically, essentially trying to make that distinction between people who really acted as medical in the collective garden.
I love medical marijuana. I am 100% for medical, and I want people to access it. I want it to be widespread. I want them to do it. And when people are out there fighting against medical marijuana, I oppose them.
Yeah.
And when the biggest problem we've got are people in marijuana, I don't like them either, and I come out against them. And there's been a lot, I've been a controversial figure on both sides of the fence.
Well, they hurt all of us.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people in medical marijuana who don't like me.
Yeah, I know that.
Fine, fuck them.
I heard
don't
quite
care.
a bit from a lot of them.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care.
You've told me personally several times that
I have
you
to
did it
act,
right.
I have to act with integrity. Okay, and to me, that means doing the right thing at all times, doing the best I can as I understand, putting my best foot forward. And if it pisses you off, you're pissed off. I don't give a fuck. Okay,
Yeah.
I will speak the truth as I understand it, and that's what I have done, and I've done so consistently from day one.
Yeah.
No, but we're not here to defend me. Yeah,
Well,
I'm defensive.
Our garden didn't make a lot of money out there.
Let's talk about. Okay, so we know that
we
this
did it
happened.
right.
We know that it happened, and we know
Yeah.
how it happened. Why it happened is debatable. I have my opinion, other people have theirs, and they're no more than their opinions. Okay.
Your opinion don't hurt me. We did it right.
Right.
So we're
Exactly.
okay.
Well, you were one of my clients.
I know.
But all right. So anyway, I set people up to do things right. Now we jump ahead in time. And the state legislature says we want to bring in the medical people who were reliable and did things right. We want, if you're going to do a merit-based system, and we have to give priority to people who operated collective gardens or who worked in collective gardens. We want their knowledge, we want their experience, we want this to benefit patients. And they said collective garden. Okay. Now, LCB didn't understand what collective garden was.
And this
They
is the key
looked.
right
They
here.
looked out and they saw retail marijuana stores, dispensaries that sold marijuana to medical patients, and they go, "Those are collective gardens."
Yeah.
And they made their rules based on that assumption. The problem is this: collective garden has a very specific meaning under the law. Okay, so let's look at that for a second. If you go back, we had designated providers prior to 2011, right?
Yep.
And if you had a dispensary, the people appointed you as their designated provider, you take care of their medicine, and they'd fire you the next
Patient and caregiver.
Right. And we had, kind of a rotating deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when Senator Colwell's and some others did Senate Bill 5073, and they wanted to do a comprehensive regulatory scheme so that medical marijuana could be regulated. And they put a lot of work into this. And if you look at Section 7 of Senate Bill 5073, there's many parts to it and hundreds of rules set for medical marijuana dispensaries. Department of Health, Department of Agriculture, Department of Transportation, Department of Revenue. There's taxes, distribution, testing. It's all really well thought out.
Yeah, they were supposed to have the whole package there. In
They
that,
did.
in that
They
deal,
did. They did. But now let me finish. They also, though, as an afterthought, and those are Senator Colwell's words, as an afterthought, we created the collective garden. Now, the collective garden appears in Part 4, Section 403, one section, and it's a very small section. And basically what it says is you have some dirt, you have some seeds, and I have a basement, I know how to do it. So we're patients, and we'll help each other with our medicine, grow our own medicine.
Yeah.
That's what a collective garden was meant to be. And it's why what it says, and this is an almost verbatim quote, it says, for purposes of this chapter, collective garden means qualifying patients, sharing responsibility for acquiring and supplying the resources necessary to produce, process, and deliver medical cannabis.
That is exactly
That's
right.
what it says, okay? And it's not a business, it isn't an entity, it isn't licensed, it isn't registered, it's a group of patients helping one another with their medicine. It's all it ever was.
Yeah.
Governor
It was a
Greg-
non-entity model.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Governor Gregoire vetoes all of the entire regulatory scheme. And
Yeah.
she says and I said it's on the first page of the veto address, but in paragraph 4 to be exact, she says if patients want medical marijuana, they can grow their own, or they can participate in collective garden. This
Yeah.
comes from Governor Gregoire, as collective garden is written at that time in Senate Bill 5073, Part 403,
Yeah.
later code of 69518085. Okay? That's what collective garden
And those
is.
are the current laws we had up
That
until
is
2015.
right. The legislature did not change collective garden in 12, 13, 14, or 15.
Oh, it was. Well, I thought
They
the
never
bill passed in 15, wasn't it? Or was it 16?
I'll get to it. They never redefined collective garden. Now, again, Seattle said, you want to be a dispensary? We don't care. We'll license you as a retail dispensary. And they said, okay, fine, we're collective gardens. And so the way we use the word collective garden in casual conversation between non-lawyers, that may have been just fine. But I'm a lawyer.
Yeah.
And when you say something to me like exhibit, are you talking about showing me something or the courtroom meeting? It's been marked as an exhibit. It's been officially admitted into evidence after laying a proper foundation. An exhibit is a very definite meaning under the law, and it's the same with collective garden. We might use it in conversation to mean one thing. But as a matter of law, it means qualifying patient sharing responsibility sum, right? That's what it is. It's not an entity.
This is why we didn't make $1 million.
Right, exactly. Well, a lot of people,
but we weren't there to make $1 million. We were there to help
saving a
folks.
life is worth way more than $1 million.
Oh yeah.
Providing
Definitely.
quality to the end of one's life is worth way more than $1 million.
Definitely.
You have that satisfaction.
100% agreed.
You know, a lot of us have that satisfaction, but.
So let's get back to the definition.
Anyway, so we're getting there, okay? All right, so we've got the definition of collective garden as a legal matter. So, in Senate Bill 5052, in 2015, the legislature wants to blend this. Is we want a merit-based system where you give priority to people who operate or work in collective gardens. The legislature and not legislature, they write that. LCB says, well, these are collective gardens. And so they make their rules. The problem was they never understood what a collective garden was. They were not using it as a legal term. They were using it as the way they thought, whatever they thought a collective garden was.
Yeah,
they were allowed to do.
Corporate dispensary model.
Right, exactly. And so the rules, so they said, their rule, and this is the part we challenged in this lawsuit, it says that if you operated or worked in a collective garden prior to January 2013, you get priority. To prove this, you have to present a master business license from Department of Revenue showing that you owned a collective garden prior to January 2013.
Which licensed entity wasn't legal
well,
prior
let's talk.
to...
There's two problems there, okay? The first one is that operated. Didn't say owned.
Oh.
They changed it to owned. Do you see a problem here?
Yeah.
You can operate it and not own it. You can own it and not operate it. And one of the things I told the judge is, look, I have a McDonald's franchise. I never set foot in the damn place. I own it, but it's operated by managers and employees.
Yeah.
And I can operate a McDonald's and still not own it, and never even have a chance of owning it because I don't have enough money to own it.
Yeah.
You know, there's a huge difference. In the LCB, by changing it from operated to owned, raised the bar impermissibly.
Yeah.
They have no statutory authority to do
Well,
that.
it also created a black market for paycheck stubs.
That was the or worked at part. That was the or worked at part. It's a different prong. The owned, operated thing. Now, then it said, this is the second part, was what you pointed out, was produce a business license from the Department of Revenue, saying that you owned a collective garden. Well, if you followed the law, the 69-518-085, you were never required to have a business license.
Yeah, because you were a non-entity.
It's not a business.
Yeah.
You were never required. So now LCB is requiring you to produce a license you were never required as a matter of law to have, proving that you owned it when the legislature never said anything about owning it.
And this is how half of medical
That was what we challenged the law on.
Yeah.
That was that. And the judge agreed with us on both of those, saying LCB exceeded statutory authority and invalidated that part of the rule. And that's huge, because a lot of people that would have otherwise been priority one, but couldn't prove that they violated the law, got eliminated, got put as priority 3. Priority 2, same thing.
Well, that's exactly what happened to us.
Right, exactly. And a lot of people that were thrown into priority 3 that should have been and could have been priority 1 and could already have their medical marijuana facilities open right now, but don't, because LCB exceeded statutory authority. And I tried to work with them and tell them this before they made the rules permanent. Karen McCall at LCB, I don't have time for this. It slams the phone in my ear, and you know.
Maybe a court order will help that.
Well, yes, it will. There's no maybe about that. Now, the other thing I challenged them on is this, and it says, because it also says in there, have a history. The law statute says, 5052 says that you have to have a history of having paid applicable taxes and have a history of having all applicable state and local licenses.
But taxes weren't applicable.
Well, neither was any of it. Let me explain. If you're not a business, you're not going to have a license. The judge has already acknowledged that. And if you're not a business and you don't have a license, you're not going to pay any taxes. Okay?
Yeah.
So, it's not applicable tax? What's an applicable tax? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, all right, and the same thing with business licenses. But this gets even more complicated, because if you go back to sales tax, back in May 31st, 2011, the Department of Revenue put out a special notice. And what it said, which that was with dispensaries and designated providers were going, right? It says it says retail sales of medical marijuana are not exempt from sales tax as a prescription drug, because marijuana is a Schedule I controlled substance. It has no recognized medical value and cannot be prescribed. And therefore, you don't get an exemption as a prescription drug.
Wow.
Now that has some logic to it, okay? It makes sense on the surface. But the problem is this. It's not what our law says.
Yeah, our law here in Washington State.
Well, right,
Federal law might be different,
fuck federal law. Who cares about it? I'm lying. But the U.S. attorney in a courtroom is just another attorney, okay? In this case, he's an attorney with an inferior position. Fuck him. But besides that, yeah, I give a good interview.
I love it.
So anyway, so RCW 82080281 is where we find our exemption for prescription drugs. And what it says is that when in the state of Washington, citizens who buy prescription drugs do not pay sales tax. And what it does is then defines, it says that for purpose of this chapter, we will use the following definitions. And it defines prescription and it defines drugs in the broadest terms possible. And the bottom line is if a medical professional says you need it, it doesn't matter what it is. You don't pay sales tax on it.
It's considered prescription.
Right. If I go to a grocery store, drugstore, and I buy aspirin, I'm going to pay sales tax on it.
Yeah.
But if I'm in the hospital and a doctor says give him aspirin every 2 hours, I don't pay sales tax on it because a medical professional said I needed it. Okay?
Great point.
Section 0283 that deals with naturopaths. It says, the definition there, it says medicines of botanical origin authorized or dispensed for treatment of a human infirmity by a naturopath under 1836A.
Yeah.
Tell me how that's not on all fours. Marijuana's a botanical authorized and dispensed to treat terminally ill patients and debilitating medical conditions
it's
by naturopaths. That is on all fours. But Berneberg goes, well, if you try and call marijuana botanical, you're really corrupting the English language. He said, what the fuck are you talking about? It did not call it a botanical.
They basically say if you call a plant, you know.
So anyway,
Wow.
based on that, I represent several clients. We have sued for refunds from DOR based on this. Now, it also happened in Spokane. Rhonda Duncan and Compassionate Kitchen sued on the same grounds. The judge out there ruled in the taxpayer's favor, said it is exempt.
Yeah.
The Department of Revenue appealed it to Division III Court of Appeals. We're out here in Thurston County. Judge Tabor says, no, it's not a prescription, it's not exempt. And we appealed directly into the state Supreme Court. So these cases are kind of pending. We're waiting for the Supreme Court to give us an answer as to whether or not they're going to hear this case. Hopefully they will, because this is where it's going to end up anyway. And I'm convinced that we're going to win. And Department of Revenue has unlawfully collected somewhere between $30 and $40 million in sales tax.
Oh yeah.
All right, now,
we paid some of that, and you told me I didn't
now, all
have
of
to.
this is really history. It's really interesting because as 5052 is making its way through the legislature, there's different versions of it that come up, right?
Yeah.
And I was looking at the version right before the one that actually passed.
You're talking about second
5052.
substitute?
Right, one of the
okay.
second substitutes. There's the number of.
Yeah,
but what it said was this. It said he had a history of paying sales tax to the Department of Revenue. I sent an email to Senator Rivers. I said, Senator Rivers, I said, you know, sales tax may not be required. And here's why. And I showed her the statutes in the Ronald Duncan case and told her about our statutes.
Yeah.
She emailed me back and says, well, what I meant by tax, I meant B&O tax. I sent her an email. So you need to reread the statute because you specifically said sales tax.
Sales tax.
She sends me an email. I says, great, I'll fix it in the house. And the next version that came through, sales tax went away, and it was replaced with had a history of paying applicable taxes.
Ah.
Okay, so now applicable tax is ambiguous. It could mean many things.
Yeah, it's very vague.
Right. So, as a matter of law, when we go into a court and ask a court for a ruling, the court says that's ambiguous. And so their first goal is to give effect to the intent of the legislature.
Yeah.
Now,
Fine.
in this case, we have Senator Rivers, who sponsored and wrote the bill, saying, I didn't mean sales tax.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that throws everything for a
So
loop.
now let's jump ahead to real life. So I apply for a license with Department of Revenue, or the LCB. LCB asks Department of Revenue for a tax status letter. The LCB says, we assessed them $50,000 in sales tax and it hasn't been paid yet. LCB tells me to go fuck myself. Now, a couple problems. Number one, it's based on sales tax, which we already know isn't necessarily an applicable tax.
No.
First problem. Second problem is this. If I appeal that assessment with Department of Revenue, they send me a letter that says you do not have to pay this tax until such time as your appeal is determined. I don't have to. The LCB rule says have a history of being current on taxes.
Yeah.
And so LCB says they assess you $50,000 and you're not current. I said, they sent me, here's the letter saying I don't have to pay it. I am current. LCB says if they don't say so, we're not
Yeah.
bullshit.
So it's a conflict
They will
of
not.
interest.
They won't look at our evidence.
Yeah.
This shows that we're current.
Yeah.
Now the judge wouldn't invalidate the rule based on the language because the language was so similar. However, I am coming back in after she signs the order with a motion to reconsider, because I did find a way, because it is arbitrary and capricious, because it's a failure to acknowledge evidence, and I still think she can invalidate that rule, so we're not done yet.
Yeah, you're
That's
still
that
going after it.
They don't know that one's coming. That's coming down Monday. But let's go back to lawsuit. Let's go back to lawsuit.
Yeah.
All right. So we're trying. I'm saying to the judge that they're entitled to injunctive relief, meaning that LCB has to go back and reconsider these applications under with that part of the rule being one. And if they're priority one under the new rules, then they need to be given an opportunity, a meaningful opportunity to get a license. Now, I also think that because that rule didn't effectively exist going back to last September, everybody who was denied priority one under that rule should be able to get a hold of LCB and say, I want my application reconsidered. And if they are in fact priority one, they need a chance to get realistic opportunity to get licensed. We have some people who withdrew their applications because they were told they couldn't comply, so they just withdrew it. We have other people that tried and tried and tried and tried, and eventually did get through, but by the time they got through, there was no licenses available.
Yeah, that's
So
what
they need relief, because but for a rule that didn't comply with the law, they would have been open and licensed by now, but now they can't. But for a rule that should never, now as a matter of law, didn't exist in the first place, I withdrew my application because they told me I didn't comply because of that rule. They need relief. People who were kicked to priority 3 who didn't withdraw, they need relief. Okay? So there's a whole group of people out there, probably 1,000 or so applications that are entitled to relief under this ruling. Now, how's LCB going?
A lot of people.
Right. So I mean, it could open the door back up for a lot of people to get a remedy and come forward. And that's why I say, people think, well, that this ruling, because it invalidates rules and because it was applicants who prevailed against LCB in the lawsuit, everybody's getting real excited thinking that it does things that, and maybe it doesn't. It doesn't just destroy it all and make them start over again. It doesn't do anything like that.
No.
I didn't ask that. One of the things that
It makes them rethink the priority process, correct?
Exactly, and how they were eliminating people, and that they were doing so with an understanding or an idea of collective garden that was wrong. As a matter of law, it was something else entirely, which meant that people who followed the law were excluded because they followed the law.
Yeah.
And people who didn't follow the law were being given preference. Because LCB, how many times do we hear people say, we want the well-behaved dispensaries who got business licenses and paid taxes to come on board? Well, that's a great sentiment, but that's unfortunately not what the law said to do.
No.
And the LCB need to ask the question, what is it that makes you a collective garden? And if you can't answer that question, I don't care how many business licenses you had or how many taxes you paid, you're not a fucking collective garden. You don't get priority. Sorry, I don't care how well behaved you were, who you bent over for, or what you kissed or sucked.
Yeah, you got to be.
You're not a collective garden.
Coming
too
together
fucking bad,
to form
okay?
a collective for the
That's
purpose of.
That's it. You got to be a collective garden to get priority.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not looking to undo anybody's license or anything else. I'm looking to give an opportunity. We need a lot more stores anyway. I'm looking to give people an opportunity.
Honestly, they have a right to exist too. I mean, we can't sit here and complain that we didn't have our right to exist and then say that somebody else doesn't have a right to exist.
Vulture capitalists know how to manipulate shit, get shit done, get it done quick.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, and you look at Seattle, there's 21 new licenses available in the medical collectives. They said, we'll take your time, make sure you have the right documentation. And they said,
that's what they told us.
That's
take
what
your
we'll
time,
do. That's what we'll do, man. We'll do that. And the next thing they get a letter going, sorry, you lose. We already gave out all the licenses. They're going, but you told me I didn't have to hurry. Right? Yeah. So that's a problem. I know that lawsuit is up.
Well, that's what the Davis case is.
And they're absolutely right, And, people who are opening up who had absolutely no experience in medical. But they understood the way the rules work, what LCB was looking for, and were able to cobble together an application that got through.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of that, I guess, that went on too. I'm not involved in that lawsuit, so I don't know.
Apparently, there's a bunch of information coming out that there was a whole bunch of people that, Davis did a study, and what he found was that a lot of these entities who got licensed weren't even stores previous to the second wave of licensure.
And that may well be. I didn't participate in any of that.
Some of the study
sounds like a pretty good case to me.
Some of the study shows that some of the people just went out and got paycheck stubs from
and if that happens, that's just fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
But here's another thing too, where my lawsuit, where this ruling might help that case.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of the people who got shut out because of time, the reason they took so long was because they were trying to comply with a rule that, as it turned out, didn't exist.
Yeah.
And so they're entitled to a remedy. I got cut off because I was trying to comply with this rule that, as it turns out, shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Yeah.
Had that not been there, I would have complied and I would have got in ahead of these people and I'd already be open by now.
Yep.
So I think they're entitled to relief as well. So we'll see how it goes. We're going to get the judge to write. I'm writing a ruling that I'm presenting this Friday. She ordered myself and the attorney from the Attorney General's office to talk and see if we could come up with an agreed order. And we talked and we couldn't. And then we talked again with LCB on the phone and we couldn't. And we got fairly close, but they weren't going to extend the remedy as far as I want. I want to make sure that everybody who deserved remedy had a chance at it.
Yeah.
They weren't going to go there. They said, well, if you don't do that, we're going to go back to our original ruling. And I said, well, okay, fine, I'll see you in court. I'm a trial lawyer. Are you scared to go to court with you? You know, I mean, you're the Attorney General. So what? You're just an attorney in the courtroom. In this case, you already lost. You know?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I'm just scared to go to court with you? Are you kidding me? I'm not scared of anybody.
So it's how long do you want to keep the boxing gloves on?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes me not being scared results in me, hey, let me borrow your fist.
Yeah.
But I'm not scared.
Yeah,
But anyway, so, you know, in this case we won, and we're presenting the order this Friday, and we're going to prevail again. And we're going to get this thing done, and you know, the Attorney General says, well, we're just going to write a rule, and LCB is going to do it the way they see fit. And I says, whatever. I says, you write whatever you want to write, and if it doesn't comply with the law, we will continue to fuck with you until you do.
Amen.
And the attorneys that were with him went,
Yeah.
yeah, I used to be able to be frank.
I
and
think you're
brutally
doing a
honest.
great service for those people who are out there serving the medical community for so long. You know, I think what you're doing is awesome, and I congratulate you. And
Well, thanks. But I want people to also realize too that I don't represent causes. I represent
You
clients.
represent people
I
and
represent
clients.
You know, and I'm not out there. I'm not going to mention any names. But people that, medical marijuana, medical marijuana. I don't represent medical marijuana. I represent clients who got screwed by LCB. There's a difference.
But
There's a
Jay,
difference.
you represent me, so you do. You just
There is
don't
a-
know it yet.
Well, I know I do, but I want to make sure that people don't think that just because I work for medical marijuana patients and I do good things for medical marijuana,
You're a rebel without a cause.
that I have anything to do with them.
Yeah.
Because I don't.
Yeah.
You know, medical marijuana is not fucking tomatoes. I wish it was. You know, if it's
Yeah.
tomatoes, we can grow as many tomatoes as we want. We do whatever we
Yeah.
want. We take them to the farmer's market. We can sell them. We can trade them. Do whatever we want with it.
I've
Because
said
it's
that for years.
tomatoes.
Tomatoes
And
are legal.
Right.
Cannabis
And I
is
think
illegal.
cannabis, marijuana, same thing. I think it should absolutely be like tomatoes. As a person, I absolutely believe that.
Yeah.
But I'm also a lawyer.
But you're a lawyer, and
And
you're
I'm an
working
officer
for
of
your
the court.
clients.
I have to bring in cases that have a basis in fact in the law.
You know, I've had to tell that to some of your critics once in a while when they got on me, and I said, look, Jay's first and foremost, he's a businessman, he's a lawyer, he gets paid to represent clients, not causes.
And I'm not going to go into court and argue. I've always told people, I'm not going to argue that you have a right to break the law.
Yeah.
I will argue that the law is unconstitutional. I will argue that you did in fact comply with the law, even though it's unconstitutional. And I'll make those arguments.
Yeah.
But just to argue that civil disobedience is great. The Berneberg brothers bidding swords into plowshares, right?
Yeah.
Those are Catholic priests. They got arrested numerous times for civil disobedience. And civil disobedience is a wonderful thing. But you're going to get arrested.
You are going to get
prosecuted.
arrested.
And you
You
have
have
to,
the
if you want to do civil disobedience, be prepared to do it. That's the price.
Oh.
Don't come hire me and go, but now they want to put me in jail. Well,
Yeah.
of course they do. You broke the fucking law. You did it intentionally.
One of my good friends was Louis A. Starr Jr. He was the one who sparked the fish wars with the forestry department and the U.S. Department of Resources. So I know all about that.
I mean, anti-war stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of us have been doing it for a long time. You know,
Yeah.
marijuana's just one of many things that I'm interested in. But
Yeah.
yeah, so you know,
We still appreciate what you're doing.
well, thank you. You know, I enjoy doing it too. You know?
I know you do. I can tell by that shit-eating grin on your face.
I do. I really do enjoy it, and I've had a lot of fun. And again, I don't shy away from controversy. You know, and I know people out there that are really devoted their lives to medical marijuana. They have an idea of what they think it is and what they think it ought to be. And when I disagree with them and come at it from a different angle, I know that it upsets them and pisses them off.
Yeah. Well, we've disagreed plenty of times, but you know, I still respect what you know.
Well, and that's okay. I get it. I understand it. You know, but I just have a different approach to it too. You know, I mean, I know about negotiating. I know about being a diplomat. I know about settling cases. I mean, a lot of times it's to our advantage to do that, and that's another part of my abilities that I have that they may not have.
Yeah.
You know, they're playing a zero-sum game. We either win or we lose. And life isn't a zero-sum game. You know, it's supposed to be.
Well, we're all
when
losing now.
We're going to have to make a compromise where we can both do something for each other. And it's going to cost us each a little something, but let's do something that works for both of us.
Yeah.
That's how we negotiate. That's how we do business. That's how we make progress.
Yeah.
You don't win progress by going all or nothing, motherfucker.
Well,
because
for
you
me,
know what? A lot of times you get nothing. And that's
for
what's
me, I
happening
feel
now.
it's my right to exist. Yeah, but I also feel it's I-502's right to exist. They have a right to exist. I have a right to exist. And though it's not enumerated specifically that free markets are a right of the people, they are a right of the people
Well,
because it's based on the framework of it. It says I have a right to liberty.
Right, since the last time, well, you're getting all broad there. But,
Well, I do have a right to liberty.
Your liberty ends at the end of my nose, okay? If you're going to do this, your liberty ends right there because mine starts.
It ends just about where you what you're willing to fight for, but so long as I don't infringe upon you as a person.
I agree with that as a matter of
You know what I
principle,
mean?
but as a lawyer, you know, you're using words that get very specific meanings in law.
Oh,
That's the way we have a conversation.
And there you go, guys. If you really want to piss off judges and lawyers, just utter the words liberty. You'll really get them going.
So, but something interesting did happen that I read about here just real recently, in the last couple of days. And that was an article that came out, I think it started in Olympia, and this was picked up by different news organizations. It said there's no medical cannabis out there. That the products that patients need are not being produced, and the producers are not producing them because it's too financially risky.
Mm-hmm.
There's too many new rules regarding contamination of pesticides, and they could grow the crop and then lose the entire crop because it wouldn't pass the rules.
Mm-hmm.
They're worried that there don't enough places have medical marijuana endorsements to carry specific medical products.
Yeah.
They're worried that maybe the demand isn't there and that they can't there, so they're not producing it. And so the stores that do have medical endorsements are out there don't have product.
I would think it was
people
because
were
the
losing-
medical community refused to give them the genetics. But
Well, there's some of that, but no, I know a lot of people, medical growers, who just immediately have crossed over and gotten 502 producers so they could produce medical marijuana and they could continue doing what they do and making a living and doing what they love and helping people. And that's cool, there's a lot of that, and I'd encourage that.
well, not all medical marijuana is created equal.
Right.
Some has different purposes. You know,
Absolutely,
different properties
absolutely,
and
I agree.
profiles.
I agree, and you know, and the problem is that LCB, I think, is going to come under an increasing amount of heat and pressure to fix this,
Yeah.
because there was a lot of assurances made to people that this would not harm them, that medical products would be available, they'd be accessible, and they'd be affordable.
Mhm.
Those were the promises that were made,
Yeah.
and right now it's not happening.
No.
And is it growing pains? Is it bumps in the road? Maybe. Is it a systemic deficiency? Possibly. Is it because the people out there have a problem with medical marijuana and believe it's medical in the first goddamn place?
Yeah.
Likely. It's like, go back to the sales tax thing. If, the people in the Department of Health and Department of Revenue said, oh, medical marijuana, this is the greatest thing since fucking penicillin, we wouldn't have an issue about sales tax. They say, oh, this absolutely works. But they don't see it that way. What they say is medical marijuana is just a bunch of pot smokers trying to find a getaway to pay taxes, not on my watch, buddy. And look out there what they're calling medical marijuana. You think that's fucking medical? You think I'm going to give them a deduction for sales tax? That's what we're fighting against. If they'd said, well,
they've stated
that's the
that
best
there's no
medicine since
difference.
penicillin, man, and no sales tax. You guys are great.
They've stated there's no difference between medical marijuana and regular marijuana, and to a degree that's true. There's some truth to that. But then to another degree there's some non-truth to that.
Yeah, that came from Christy Weeks.
There's two sides to that story.
Christy Weeks is the attorney for the Department of Health, okay? And when I first heard her make that statement, it pissed me off because there's a huge difference.
Yeah.
But then I was in a meeting with her.
It depends. I mean, if you're talking the same sour diesels and the same blue dreams and the same whatevers that everybody...
I was at a meeting with retailers, an LCB enforcement officer, and Christy Weeks came from the Department of Health to address the owners of the 502 stores to explain medical marijuana and the new rules and policies. And when she said medical marijuana is no different than recreational marijuana, I got a totally different take on it. She, again, as a lawyer, I'm listening lawyer to lawyer, she's speaking within legal meaning. As a matter of law,
I know, you guys need definitions.
as a matter of law, there is no difference between recreational marijuana and medical marijuana, and that is a good thing.
And legally, there isn't.
So when she made that statement, what did she mean? Did she mean medical marijuana is bullshit, the only difference is in the mind of the user? Or was she saying, hey, look, we're not going to make a distinction here because it's not good to do so, because a lot of people use it both ways.
Yeah.
You know, you could use a sour diesel for medical, you could use it to get high.
Well, then they'll be admitting medical benefit, and they can't be doing that.
Well, they have to admit medical benefit because the voters told them they had to.
Yeah.
And they cannot ignore science.
Amen to
There's
that.
a lot of good science out there. So, you know, they may want to, but they can't. You
Well,
know,
we have strains particularly, and sorry rec users, that aren't specifically geared for recreational. Some of them, they're just not going to give you the euphoric effect you want.
Right.
Some of the other ones, quite frankly, we feel are just a little too potent to be out there on the recreational market. I mean, I got some stuff that I have you drooling in a cup in under 30 minutes. So, but we've spent 15 years developing those strains, and they are absolutely different than anything else on the market.
well, you know, I think, you know, part of the reason we're here is I think because a lot of people involved in medical weren't responsible, and they handled irresponsibly, and they didn't respect the fear, and they tried to shove it up people's asses, and
Yeah.
this is what happens. You know, those people have more power than us, always have. And that's how we got where we are. And so now that we're here, you know, we're trying to work with it the best that we can to get medical out to the patients that need it,
Yeah.
and to the people who were doing that with collectives and dispensaries or retail business, whatever, that business model, that they be allowed to go forward and do that again. You know,
Yeah.
when people say the death of medical, they're not talking about medicine. What they're talking about is the economy. They grew up
Yeah,
around
the economy
medical.
part.
Man, they're killing medical. No, that's not what they're doing. What they're doing is they're killing your economy.
Yeah.
You know, growing in your house, growing in your basement, growing in your outbuilding, and selling it tax-free, undocumented, unregulated, do whoever you want to sell it to, claiming it's
Yeah.
medical. You're right. That's over.
Well, the problem is you've
They
got guys
killed
like
that.
me who have been out there handing patients, you know,
Right.
quarter pounds for $400, you know,
That's great.
stuff like that.
Unfortunately,
You
it's
know,
not legal. You know?
Yeah. Well, it keeps the lights on. I mean, so you got to pay the
I-
power bill somehow.
You know, again,
know what
as
I
a
mean?
person,
So-
I love it.
So
As a
I mean,
person, as a
trust
lawyer-
me, we didn't make a
As
damn
a lawyer,
dime.
as a lawyer who has to deal with county councils
Yeah.
and mayors and city councils and
Yeah.
judges and prosecutors and attorney generals.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a whole different fucking take on what's happening here and what our problems are. And our problems were created by ourselves.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know?
they were.
And you take the ignorance that's out there and the lack of information, and you take that irresponsibility and throw that gasoline on that fire.
Yeah.
We got problems.
Yeah.
They didn't kill us. We committed suicide.
I don't think you can necessarily call it a full-on suicide. I would definitely say, if anything, you could call it an assisted suicide. You know, were there things that happened? Yeah, there were things that happened that shouldn't have happened in medical. Were there some bad players? I'm sure there was. Does that mean that the whole of medical or the medical community was out here doing these things? No, not in the very least. Does it mean that it's okay to celebrate cannabis culture and still be medical? Well, yeah. I mean, this is still America, right? We all love cannabis culture. We wouldn't be here. But did medical commit suicide? No. It had a lot of help from CORE and Washington Business Association and other lobbyist groups who basically assisted the suicide. You know, there was a lot of dirty things that happened along the way. It's not black and white. It's not simple cut. It's very dynamic and very complicated. But did overall medical commit suicide? No. It was assisted suicide. More like Kevorkian. Anyway, that's our take on it. Yeah, we know, our thing is, you know, if you could put into the garden, we need the soil, we need the lights, you know, we need electricity paid for. But we often, you know, Sir Fumo, we took him multiple care packages, and we took a lot of people a lot of care packages. We spent our own time, our own labor, our own money cooking up oil for people who were in need.
Right.
And you know, and it kept us from making the money we really needed to
I know other people in the same situation, and now you try and go forward where you have a business that actually could be very profitable and allow you to do what it is that you love to do, taking care of people that you really want to help, and LCB rewrites the rules in a way that screws you.
Oh, it's been
And so
heartbreaking.
we tried to fix
It's been heartbreaking for me. I mean, all my genetics are in little jars grown in vitro now because we can't have a plant with a root. So there's all my genetics in little jars, and I have this big giant cannabis room that I've been running for 15 years. You know, steadily that's my everyday. That's what I wake up to every morning. That's my passion. You know what I mean? And
well, we'll see if we can't get you licensed.
yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, I don't know. They say that it's hopeless for me because my passion is actually growing the plants. You know, I've got a few people who might be willing to help me out.
Yeah, I know producers and processors who are doing very well right now. Could probably use you.
Well, I've been doing great for 15 years. I've got a lot of consistency, and hey, if George Fonte says my weed is excellent, I mean, it must be all right.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. But we got to find a way to cope with a new environment. You know.
Yeah.
When it starts snowing outside, we don't wear a bathing suit and just defy the snow, do we?
Hey, man.
We put on warm clothes, you know, and
That's
it's, you know what, it's fucking snowing out there, buddy.
I know.
You know, you better get some warm clothes, get some
Hell
washes, because if you wear your swimsuit out there, you're just gonna freeze to death.
Yeah, get your
and I
boots
hear
on.
you bitching that your swimsuit's not working anymore.
No.
You're right, it doesn't.
No,
Put on
don't
some
fit.
fucking boots and galoshes and coat and let's get you out here in the weather, man.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
Acknowledge what's happening.
Oh, yeah. I love you, Jay. Thanks,
All right,
man. Appreciate it. So in the end, what do we think about it? I don't even know what to think about this circus. All I can say is, what the hell is so dangerous about this little guy? I mean, really? Dangerous to me. Have a good one, guys.